A culture clash at the state capitol as faith leaders often shy away from controversy. Why a popular Twin Cities pastor isn't keeping quiet on a mission to restore religious freedom in Minnesota. Next. Lead pastor of River Valley Church, Rob Ketterling, is my guest. Pastor Rob, as I know you're called, thank you so much for being here.
It's a joy to be here.
I guess I'd start with the question of what the heck is going on in Minnesota, Pastor, but we likely don't have enough time to answer that question. I did want to have you on, though, after seeing your involvement in this religious freedom fight at the Capitol in St. Paul. Just on background here for our listeners and our viewers, last session, Minnesota Democrats added the term gender identity to Minnesota's Human Rights Act. That addition then created questions as to whether religious groups could still make decisions based on their beliefs. So an amendment this session attempted to clarify all of this. It would have ensured religious institutions could continue hiring in accordance with their faith's values. That amendment was voted down by Democrats. So explain that. What does this mean for someone like you and your multiple churches in Minnesota?
Yeah, we're all trying to figure out what the ramifications of this will really turn out to be, because we've always had that exemption for sexual attraction or different things, and believe it or not, churches have standards when it comes to morals, and so they've always given us these exceptions, and now it doesn't exist. So the pastors are all wondering, especially with the hostility in which it was shared with us, like that we intentionally knew that we were doing this. This is to right the wrongs of what you believe. So we're like, where does this go? Does this mean that we have to hire pastors, staff? Does this mean our camp counselors can identify as anything and be in a dorm? And if we neglect that, then and we deny it, then we're going to be sued even down to camp counselor. We have churches that have daycares that are wondering, do our daycare workers not have to align with our faith and beliefs? And then even we've had people in the congregation say, what about small groups that are women's based or men's based? If we deny transgender, what would we do? And so as a church, we've already gone through this a little bit. We've said that anyone that identifies as trans that wants to be a part of our congregation can only go to small groups that are their biological sex that they were born with, or a mixed sex group, men and women, but you cannot go to the trans group. And this has been something we've been navigating and trying to install bathrooms that would be gender neutral as well as men's and female, men and women. And so we're wondering, where does this go? And with the hostility it was shared with, are we going to be attacked, or is there a plan to attack us on our beliefs?
You spent quite a bit of time at the Capitol, so lawmakers could hear from you. It was no secret where most faith leaders stood on all of this. Ultimately, the vote goes down. It's about 1 a.m. Just set the scene. What was that experience like for you? It was people from all walks of faith that were there to see, as some have said, that government now seems to come before God in a way in Minnesota.
That was a surprise for everyone. It wasn't just Christians. It wasn't just evangelicals. It was Catholic, evangelical, other Protestant groups. It was Muslims and Jewish people that were all there saying, hey, we want this exemption for our deeply held beliefs. And it was a resounding no from the Democrats. And I shared that in my church. And I know that I had people in my congregation say, whoa, 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 why picking on the Democrats? I said, they're the only ones that voted for this. I said, if anyone would have voted for this, I would be saying they were wrong. But it was amazing to see the unity that was there, but also the 1 a.m. Passing of it, and also the complete blackout, if you will, on the news media, where they're not interested in covering. You guys have been interested in doing this, but most are trying to say out of sight, out of mind, keep it out. But this is garnering national attention. We've had multiple law firms call us from all across America saying, we will represent you. Like, they may not be covering in the news, but it caught our eyes. And we see this, and this is a clear violation of your religious rights.
I saw your recent message. It's called Contending for Religious Freedom, a powerful sermon you recently delivered from the pulpit on a recent weekend. I do encourage everyone to go and watch that. But I did think, wow, this guy's brave. You hardly hear anyone actually address what so many consider these elephants in the room when it comes to these cultural issues. Why have you decided not to be quiet like so many other faith leaders on these subjects?
Becoming a grandfather, I realized I'm passing on my faith in what we have in our country, not only to my kids, but to my grandson. And that just woke me up. And then I realized you have to stand up for righteousness. You do. Years ago, I preached a message, what chapter of Daniel are we in? And you look in Daniel chapter 1, it was like, hey, let's see if God's ways are good. Daniel chapter 3, it's the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And it's like, you better dance when we play our music or else. And then Daniel 6 is we're changing the laws to trap you in your faith. And I realized we're there. And if I don't stand up, I'm making our kids in our youth group stand up in the school without anybody saying, hey, I'm with you. We're having people that work in corporate America that are saying, hey, they're forcing us to do this. Are you going to remain silent? And I wasn't going to hide behind the protection of a church. But they are attacking our beliefs. And I said, wait, if you can get us to compromise on what we believe about human sexuality and male female made in his image, witness bearers of who God is and being present in this world, if they can get us to compromise on that and lie about pronoun hospitality, they can get us to lie on anything. We're just abandoning and we're saying that we're weak. And I said, no, this is now the law has been changed to trap us in our faith, and I'm standing up. They've crossed the line, and I'm not backing down.
In that message, you also talk about steering words, which you refer to. And I thought that was such a great explanation. People fearing what happens if they speak up. Explain that.
Well, nobody wants to be called homophobic, transphobic, hater, bigot, fill in the blank with anything. And so those words are used to steer you into silence. And I asked our church, I said, your fear of being called any of those things, uh, how many of you have been afraid to post or to comment or to like something on social media? The whole congregation raised their hand because there's a pressure like I don't want to be one of those guys. And so you're like they're steering words to get you to go back into a church that worships Jesus for 1 hour on Sunday and then it has no bearing on the rest of your life. That's not faith. Faith affects every area of my life, how I spend my vacation, how I spend my money, how I do everything. And I can't be silenced and you can't steer me into the corner and make me be quiet because you're going to throw a label on me that isn't accurate. Which, by the way, if I could say this, I got an amazing response from someone, and they didn't say whether they were transgender or dealing with those thoughts, but they said, people like me, and they said, think you hate us, but I realize you don't. You really do love us. And they said, I'm hoping and praying for the joy that you have and the hope that you say is available. Keep doing what you're doing. That just encourages me. So people want us to be quiet, but there's people out there that are saying, who will speak the truth? And I just said, um, 20 years from now, I want you to say, this guy stood up for the truth and we didn't steer him into silence. And if we let, those that are opposing us steer us into silence, who's going to speak up? I mean, I'm not going to be that guy. I was raised in the way that my mom and dad were like, you need to love Jesus and never deny him no matter what. Like, you stand true for him. That's how I was raised. And I guess it's coming out now in my older age. I'm not letting that go. I'm going to be bold.
Have you faced backlash then, as the lead pastor of thousands, for taking such a stand?
Yeah, not in our congregation. There were a few people that were like, "Hey, why are we doing this?" And Aaron Wrenn did an article on the positive world, the neutral world, and the negative world. So I shared with our church, "Hey, we're in a negative world where the elite domains have a negative attitude towards people of faith. They don't have a positive disposition anymore. So we've got to realize, like, they have a disdain for us, and they will try to exclude and steer us out." But beyond that, let's call it the person that is more militant or more volatile. They've been attacking me. We were doxxed on a trans site, and our cell phones are out there, my wife and I, our address. We receive death threats. We receive um, people call us and say, "I'm coming to your house to murder your family." Um, while I was preaching, people were sending me texts and pictures of the devil. People, I mean, so we wake up every day with this. We're actually installing new software for our phone and taking safety precautions and getting security systems and cameras and all the things. But I didn't think that just standing up, I thought there was supposed to be tolerance. And I remember that old license, that bumper sticker, coexist. Remember, it had every different religion and thought on there. That's a farce. There's no coexisting. It's you must believe what we believe and you must affirm it. And if you don't, you're wrong. And that's not the America that I grew up in. I grew up in the America that and I could have different beliefs and I would respect yours, you'd respect mine, and we go our ways. And I wouldn't force you to believe mine and you wouldn't force me to believe yours. And now we have legislatures saying that if I don't use pronoun hospitality, it's not just hatred, it's violence. How did we get there? That's not America. And so, yeah, we're facing the backlash, but I'm not backing down. And we've taken security precautions. But I looked at my son the other day. He was a little worried. One of our boys was worried. And I said, guys, we have it easy. And I read to them the founding fathers. I said, they lost their houses. They lost their families. They lost their lives fighting for independence. We're just fighting for what we believe in, and we're getting harassed, and maybe it will turn to violence, but we can't back down. You cannot let violent people win. You've got to stay strong.
It's encouraging to hear the resolve in your voice as you're speaking about this. And you are the son of a military sergeant, pastor who dreamed of being a Navy pilot, but here you are, a pastor. Did you ever think these would be topics you'd be covering, even say 5 to 10 years ago?
I didn't 10 years ago, whenever it was that they did the marriage amendment and changed to include gay marriage, I thought this is the start of it. And I know when I preached that, I got attacked back then, but it was the start of it. And I was a proponent for civil unions in America for same sex and not marriage. Let marriage stay what it's been. But that lost, and we moved on. We didn't attack anybody. We just kept doing our church. And I realized that it would be coming. And I just didn't know how fast. I saw a slow descent into this. I didn't see the speed at which it would happen. And it feels like it's coming 100 miles an hour rather than 30 miles an hour. And it's not safe to walk in the street anymore. It's coming at you 100 miles an hour. And if you're not ready, you're going to get run over with this.
What do you then make of the state of affairs in Minnesota? Does it seem in a way to be more of a spiritual war than a political one?
I think it's both. I mean, it's spiritual and political. As I travel, and I travel quite extensively, people will tell me like, "Hey, Minnesota's worse than California. Hey, Minnesota's worse than New York. Hey, I thought we were liberal in Boston." And I tell people that, and this is just a generality. I say liberals on the East Coast are elites that want power. Liberals on the West are they want freedom and they want to smoke weed and do whatever else. Just leave them alone. And I said, liberals in the Midwest, they believe the ideology. And I feel like they're going to be more violent than anybody towards people that don't align with the ideology. And that's what it feels like in Minnesota. So I'm actually surprised. We've always been moderate. And the other thing I want to point out to everyone, it was a one vote majority in the Senate that has done this. It's not a huge majority in the House. It's not like it's 80% against 20. Minnesota's always been a very moderate live and let live state, not conservative by any stretch, but very moderate. And what's happening now at the Capitol is extremely progressive and extremely liberal and way to the left of mainstream. I think even Bill Maher, who I've never really been a huge fan of, even he would look at Minnesota and go, what is going on with that state? So there's something ahead of us. And I think that Minnesota, the progressives would love for this to be the example for other liberals to follow. And I'm hoping that Minnesota becomes the example that says enough is enough. And we can say, go back to being a moderate state that allows people to hold their deeply held beliefs. And we can be an example to the rest of the world. And I'm hoping that our legislatures will find the courage, because I believe that in the heart of many of the Democrats in our capital, they would like to say, this is not fair. This is not the Minnesota we grew up in. But I believe they're voting in lockstep, because if you break ranks, it's trouble. But I'm hoping that there'd be some moderates that would say, we're going to break ranks. We just cannot live this way, and that this doesn't have to go to legal remedies. But if it has to go to legal remedies, I told our congregation, I'm not backing down. We'll take this all to the Supreme Court. Somebody said this could be $500,000. It doesn't matter. I've had people sign up and say, count me in. We'll help pay for it. We had someone say they'll pay for the whole thing. And I'm not backing down. They said, well, you get labeled. I don't care. It's wrong. And if all that's needed for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing, and I'm not going to be one of those people, I'm standing up.
Amazing. But you said time is running out at the Capitol, which likely means this will all end up in court. We'll, of course, continue to follow it here on Alpha News. But Pastor Rob Ketterling of River Valley Church, thank you so much for being my guest.
It's been a joy, and I'm praying things will change.
You can follow him on X too. I want to mention that. I think you'll enjoy it. It's at Rob Ketterling. Prayers right back to you for that very same thing. Thanks again, Pastor.
Thank you.
That'll do it for this episode of Liz Collin Reports. We'll see you next time.